Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of F122 Driver Career Mode. I hope you're all having a great day. We have a incoming retirement announcement.
I knew this day would come. I, Valtteri Bottas, driver for Alfa Romeo F1 team, am here to announce my retirement from Formula One. Abu Dhabi will be my final Grand Prix in the sport. I would like to thank everyone I have worked with in the past and wish them nothing but the best in the future. Here's to one more Grand Prix.
Well, that's one way to kick off a weekend here in Brazil, the penultimate Grand Prix of the season, with a sprint race tossed into the works as well, as Max Verstappen's point gap has been cut from the championship lead to just, 3 single points that keep him ahead of Charles Leclerc coming into this race, and a lot of momentum on Ferrari's side. But of course, the big news this weekend, Valtteri Bottas announcing retirement from Formula One. He is going to be calling it a career after the next episode finale in Abu Dhabi. Stay tuned in a few moments because there is more on the way. Big news, or maybe some rumors that you guys are going to play a role in. But here we are in free practice one, getting some laps under our belt, getting some experience here on the Sao Paulo circuit, one of my favorite circuits in the world, definitely a top 5 for me. Such a fun track to drive in. You can take just about anything to this circuit and I think have a great race. Formula One, you could probably take supercars here, of course GT cars, NASCAR, you name it. I guarantee you could put on a good show here. But P12 in free practice one, as you guys know, on a sprint weekend, you jump right from free practice one into qualifying. You only get one opportunity to practice now, and in the sprint race, which will be coming up, interesting scenes going into that, but then in the actual Grand Prix itself, there's supposed to be some rain on the way, so very interesting things on the way here as Charles Leclerc topped the board in practice over Verstappen. We go into qualifying, and this is a prime opportunity for the championship to really sway today, if it already didn't sway enough in the last episode in Mexico, where Verstappen ran into continuous issues, and very well that might be the Grand Prix where he threw the World Drivers' Championship away. We'll have to wait and see and find out after, this episode or next episode. But you know, the championship could be clinched and locked up today by either driver, Leclerc or Verstappen, because of the sprint race being a possibility to make that happen. Here we are though, in Q1 now. A pretty simple lap here in Q1. Not much needed now to really get the sauce anymore into Q2 at least. So I come through down the front straight away to cross the line, and for the time being, it would be P5. And I would actually need to make a second lap. I said it was an easy cruising, but we were down in P16 as we started our final lap here in Q1, so we needed to find a little bit of time. Our teammate Schumacher was currently at least through into Q2 as well, and we would fortunately find the time that we were looking for. Only 2.5 tenths of a second is all we did find, but it was still enough to actually jump us up quite a bit here into 14th place. So I was, pretty satisfied with that now, as we would jump through into now Q2. No notable drivers eliminated in that one. Pretty standard stuff on who was out and whatnot. So now trying to make it into Q3 here in Brazil now, as we were green sector 1. Obviously it doesn't really matter. In the first lap we crossed the line. It was P4, just ahead of our teammate Mick Schumacher. Then late in the session, here we go, P11 is where we were to start our final lap, so just outside, unfortunately. And you can see we come straight through towards the end of the lap, and I had barely gained 0.5 tenth of a second, so it wasn't looking promising, as I was nearly 4 tenths of a second behind Fernando Alonso, and it's pretty obvious there, rough final turn, and yeah, it's not going to happen. So we are going to miss Q3, but let's see where we set ourselves up, at least on the grid. We crossed the line there. We do go faster, but obviously nowhere near enough here, and we actually do stay put in P11. So we will start the sprint race from P11. Not the Grand Prix, the sprint race from P11. We are out with our teammate Mick Schumacher, but after qualifying, I had an interesting meeting set up with McLaren's Zak Brown.
I'm going to get straight to the point on this, Bud. I know for a fact you talked with Horner. However, I am 100% wanting to offer you a ride for next season with McLaren. If you compare us to Red Bull, we have had better development progress all year. What will it take to bring you to the team?
I haven't signed anything yet, so can you just give me a few weeks to think about it and get back to you?
I can work with that. Let me know as soon as possible.
We have an offer from Red Bull and now McLaren. I'm leaving it in your hands. There's a straw poll down below in the comment pinned and in the description. Click the link. You determine if I'm going to Red Bull or McLaren in Season 2. Let me know with the vote in the straw poll. Let's go into the sprint race.
As we get ready for today's sprint. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, edging out Lando Norris, who'll start from P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Verstappen, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Russell, Perez, Fernando Alonso, Ricciardo, and Esteban Ocon, Golden Boy, Joe, Valtteri Bottas, and Mick Schumacher, Albon, Latifi, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll. Gasly and Sebastian Vettel starts from the back of the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint.
Well, there you have the starting grid. We are now ready to get rolling here from Brazil. A fun circuit to drive, as already mentioned. We are doing a pretty straightforward strategy, as we usually have here in the sprint races. No pit stops necessary as we get ready for this formation lap.
Ready to start the sprint as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
Alright team, decent qualifying effort, and I think we can get a strong finishing spot tonight, so let's have some fun out here today. You hear myself, as usual, on a radio to the team. We are ready to get rolling. Our teammate Mick Schumacher not far behind us. You see him in the background there. And Max Verstappen, well, he has his work cut out for him, and what was looking like a cruise to a championship earlier in the year looks like things are now falling apart here for the Dutchman as we are ready to go racing here. Now it's going to be 5 red lights in the sprint race from the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend. We are underway. Leclerc easily clear of everybody down into turn 1. You see Verstappen, he's going to get taken 3 wide by the 2 Mercedes of Russell as well as Hamilton in the background there. So not already a good start for Max Verstappen. He does hold on to his own though. He's in 5th place, but still nonetheless, if we finish where we are already on lap 1, Max Verstappen is going to, well, I think lose the championship lead going into the Brazilian Grand Prix, where Leclerc could steal everything today, and if things go wrong for Max this weekend, Leclerc could win the championship this weekend here in Brazil. What a story that would be now, as we have watched him make an absolute mega comeback drive with Ferrari as well. We could see the Constructors' Championship clinched by Ferrari here today in Brazil. So a champion in some form could be decided or determined here today. Now, as you can see, everybody's scrapping it out in the background. Perez there a little bit further down the order now. I myself just trying to settle in behind the Red Bull, as well as it was a okay start for me. It's not a very long run down into turn 1 in Sao Paulo, so even if you get a rough start, you're not going to be in too much trouble compared to some other circuits. I did lose, as you can see, 1 position. Mick Schumacher actually got past me, so yeah, it wasn't perfect by any means. It's so hard to get a perfect start in F1 22. It never really makes sense. You feel like you do everything right, but nothing seems to actually work. But we come straight through to lap 4 because absolutely nothing had happened at this point, and I was in this DRS train behind Ocon as well as Schumacher and Daniel Ricciardo. Coming into lap 5, we're already almost halfway through this thing. A little bit of cloud cover, but no weather expected at this point here. But overall, calm race here. As I say that, yellow flags up ahead. It's Lewis Hamilton who's actually gone for a spin here in turn 4, and I think Perez might have gotten into him as well. Let's take a look at a replay all on his own. Lewis Hamilton goes for a spin. Watch this. Perez runs into the back of him, damages his front wing, so Perez would have to come into the pit lane at the conclusion of lap 5, and you're going to see him right there pulling off. So Hamilton got away with it. He didn't even lose any positions, so he would continue on just fine. But now we are up into P11 once again, where we originally qualified and started the sprint race. Yellow flags. Lap 6 is our teammate Mick Schumacher's engine failing right there, so he's going to be done for the day. That is not what you want to see when your teammate has an engine fail right in front of you. So Schumacher is going to lose his chance at points, and then it turned into a bit of a 3-car scrap between Daniel Ricciardo, myself, Esteban Ocon, as well as right now up front it was a Ferrari 1-2, Leclerc, as well as Carlos Sainz, as once again yellow flags behind us this time. It looks like an Alfa Romeo. Ocon makes a move right there on Daniel Ricciardo there. They're going to be side by side here at the end of Sector 1. This is going to get a little bit spicy. You see Bottas pulling over on the track map. He's out of the Grand Prix. A stack up in front of us there. Ricciardo hangs on in front of us. Right behind us, though, fellow Canadian of Lance Stroll. He's gone for a slide. What was that all about? He was actually reacting to what was happening right there in front of him on his nose, and well, he just spun himself out basically with 2 laps to go as we came through, approaching now the final lap of the sprint. A very quick moving sprint here, but a lot of action in the last lap to the right side of Daniel Ricciardo, going for 9th place into turn 1. Ricciardo locks up into the corner, completely goes off circuit. Thank goodness I had a bit more awareness right there and was able to react to that accordingly, but obviously nowhere near Esteban Ocon there, as Charles Leclerc wins the sprint race. Max Verstappen comes home 4th. I believe this will tie the championship going into the Grand Prix. We cross the line. No points for us here in the sprint race. P9 doesn't get you anything in the sprint race, but overall, we still had a net gain of 2 positions compared to where we started that, with a lot of assistance, though, on our side with Ricciardo, with as well Perez and Schumacher's problems and whatnot. But let's take an official look at the standings here, and you're going to see it is a tie game. Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc are tied going into the sprint race. We have a battle on our hands for this championship here, which is good for Verstappen because if Leclerc doesn't get the fastest lap, he cannot automatically win the championship. But now it is time to head to the grid for the actual Grand Prix. Let's get ready to go.
Formula One returns to Interlagos once again with the stage set for what promises to be another classic Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel famously clinched his 3rd championship here in 2012, and just 4 years later, Max Verstappen treated us to one of the finest wet weather drives of all time. We're racing today then at Interlagos, a historic 2.7-mile circuit and one of the few anti-clockwise tracks on the calendar. 15 corners in total, 9 to the left and 6 to the right, with a technical middle section opening up to a flat-out Sector 3. That gives us our best passing opportunity down into Turn 1. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon, Golden Boy, Albon, Vettel, Stroll and Carlos Sainz. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Latifi, Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, they've taken a grid penalty, and Hamilton. Joe, Perez, Daniel Ricciardo, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty, and Max Verstappen, Bottas and Mick Schumacher. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box. Ant, it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into Turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
A lot of grid penalties were at P6. Verstappen way down the order. This is going to be huge for the championship. I was looking at the weather for this Grand Prix and there was rain on the way, so I decided to do hard to mediums. Let's go.
The formation lap gets underway and every driver will be looking to settle in for the race ahead, making sure that their car is ready for the battle once the lights go out. We're almost ready to start the race as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
Looks like we got an interesting championship battle on our hands today here. I hope I have a good view of it, but everybody, let's have some fun today. Great starting spot, let's make it happen. You hear myself on the radio to the team, so I'm starting on the hards while everyone else is on mediums and whatnot. So my goal is to take these hards late in the race until it starts raining and hopefully gain a bunch of time doing that and get a really good finish out of it, while everybody else is going to likely have to pit before the rain actually gets here. Schumacher at the back of the grid with a grid penalty as well. Both the Red Bulls, Verstappen and Perez. Leclerc on pole here. Now, worst case scenario for Max Verstappen, and we're lights out, and his nightmare gets underway down towards turn 1. Charles Leclerc with a great start there. Lando Norris just behind. Up the inside, George Russell sends one on his fellow Britishman, and George Russell in the Mercedes. He won this race in real life, don't forget, in 2022. Well, he moves up into second place. We got the Alpine and Fernando Alonso up there in the mix as well, but a clean start overall for everybody as we head down this first little quick straightaway in towards that left-handed turn 4. And I myself had an okay start. Wasn't fantastic as you could expect to be the usual here in F122. Now, as everyone's coming up through the elevation changes, Sebastian Vettel, don't forget, he's also retiring at the end of this season. It's his penultimate Grand Prix weekend along with Valtteri Bottas there. So I'm going to miss both Seb, my favorite driver, of course, in Formula 1 all the time, on the grid, and we'll miss Valtteri as well in game. At least we know in F123, though, we'll have Valtteri Bottas in the game. However, we won't have Seb in game in F123. So I will be trying to do like a little special episode for him here in Abu Dhabi, as it'll be my final time racing with him in a career mode series, which is kind of sad. But nonetheless, here you can see Max Verstappen not really gaining much on the opening lap of this Grand Prix, so he has definitely got some work to do. And could the weather really play into his favor? I wonder. Max Verstappen's so good in wet conditions, but we don't really necessarily know when that rain is going to actually be here, because the weather I have in this game, the setting is approximate for the forecast, not exact, so we don't know how or when that rain is really going to be coming. But you can see myself settling in here in P7. Carlos Sainz, who had a grid penalty, now had worked his way forward and gotten alongside myself, and I wasn't going to make it difficult on him. I wasn't trying to make it difficult on a car that is so much faster, of course, than a Haas. And the future of Haas, uncertain. We don't know what's going on with Haas yet. News coming potentially in the next episode there. Spin behind. That was Alex Albon and the Williams, who looped it all around on his lonesome. And he is actually going to go for a bit of an adventure as that was happening there. What is he doing? This is actually going to cause problems. This is going to bring out the safety car in the Brazilian Grand Prix on just lap 6 of the Grand Prix. So, safety car is out, and that helps me because nobody's in their pit window yet, and my tires are getting better and better compared to the mediums as the laps goes on, and now I get right up to the back of these guys in front of me. So this is going to be very beneficial if our strategy of waiting till the rain works out. Verstappen actually up there in 14th place. His teammate Perez as well struggling down in 18th. Ricardo in last right now. I believe he might have needed to get a front wing change at some point there in the opening laps. As you can see now, getting ready to go back. Green flag racing on the 8th position, coming to lap number 10 of 36 laps. Well, they fly by here in Brazil. It takes about a minute 10 seconds for my car at least to navigate around this circuit. So it's not a long track, it's a quick race. We get back underway though and just trying to hold on to P8 here. As you can see, some scraps up there in front of us now. That's Ocon going at it with Lando Norris as well as Carlos Sainz. I have a little bit of pressure there from the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll behind myself. You see myself asking a lot of questions right there to Mark the engineer now, but those two continue to go at it in front of us. Norris, Ocon, they're not being very, very kind with one another right now. Carlos Sainz, the Spaniard, he wants these guys to get it on and, you know, get going with his days. So he's trying to find a way around them both, but couldn't quite manage to do that yet now. Lap 13 of 36, and just kind of holding my own. I don't have the pace for the cars in front of me. I barely have enough pace to hold off the cars behind me of Stroll and Tsunoda, but things start to change, and I get a bit more comfortable as the run goes on. Lap 15 of 36, and Verstappen is continuing to struggle. He can't even get into the points. Leclerc and Russell, they come in P1, P2. It's going to be a new set of hard compound tires for both of those drivers. Could it be the final stop or not? We don't know yet. Sebastian Vettel to the lead of the Grand Prix for what could be the final time in his Formula 1 career. Vettel leads the Grand Prix one last time in Brazil over Carlos Sainz and myself. They both would pit in front of me, so we would cycle through to the lead. We're the only one that started on the hard compound tire, so we are staying significantly longer than everybody, and I'm planning to go past my pit window, but now I'm actively asking, what's the weather look like? Because my pit window opens on lap 21. Well, I want to know, when is it going to rain, of course? You can see the cloud cover is picking up, so the rain, it's coming, but it's still got a ways to go. And Mark tells me about 15 minutes on lap 21. It's gonna rain late in this Grand Prix, and I hope the track gets wet, otherwise this strategy is not looking so good. Lap 24, Leclerc 1.8 seconds behind. Here was the view around the circuit. Rain was surrounding this circuit here. It was imminent, it was incoming momentarily. We're just waiting for it to strike at this point. Lap 25 now, Charles Leclerc, he had run me down. I wasn't trying to be in his way, wasn't trying to make it too difficult for him. I mean, of course, Haas is with an alliance here with Ferrari, so I let him just go by on the inside. Actually, we nearly have a run in there. He had a bit of a mishap, but he nonetheless goes to the lead, and it wasn't long till other cars were passing me as well. George Russell wasn't far behind. He would cruise past. Fernando Alonso looking for another podium. Alpine, watch out for Alpine, I think, in Season 2. They have a lot of speed, and they continue to show it, especially with Fernando Alonso, who's going to zoom to my inside there, put me down to 4th place. Carlos Sainz 8 seconds back. I reckon the rain is going to be here and hopefully worsening the condition of the track before Sainz gets here. You can see the gap would cut down to 6.4, but we're just waiting. Where's the rain? Well, there's the rain right there. It is finally raining here with coming to 7 laps to go. So we need to hope that the rain definitely picks up, so that way, of course, we can get to a point where we need the intermediate tires. Sebastian Vettel right now running P6. Max Verstappen is in towards the points, but he is still not making much headway. He is going to suffer a big loss to Charles Leclerc, and looking like he might put himself in a must-win scenario at the bare minimum going into Abu Dhabi to win the World Drivers' Championship, and it will all depend on what happens to Leclerc in the ending of this race and next race. Mark, lap 31, recommends changing to the intermediate, so I say no more, Mark. We're going to come in and put on those inters because Sainz now only 1 second behind. Everybody stays on the circuit, so this is a potential opportunity for myself here that nobody is going to box, so we might actually be able to gain a good chunk of time. Are they going to stay out to the end of the Grand Prix because we only have 5 laps to go, or are they going to stay out another lap or 2, then pit? Not 100% sure yet what exactly was happening here, but nonetheless, even after this, we're going to exit the pit lane in the points still, it looks like. You see Stroll get past. Just behind myself was a whole line of the AlphaTauris of Tsunoda and Gasly, as well as Lewis Hamilton, Daniel Ricciardo, but look at this. We were gaining a ton of time as we kick off the intermediate compound tires. Running down Lance Stroll, Leclerc, and none of the top 4 had pitted yet. We're going to cruise right on past the Aston Martin. It's not even a contest. Verstappen currently in 8th place. He is boxing right now. Leclerc comes in a lap later, lap 34. He brings a whole train of cars, Russell, Alonso as well. So they are in. We're going to gain a good chunk of time on these guys because we had the inters on for like 2 whole laps before they had finally made the switch onto the intermediate compound tires. So we're going to blow past Carlos Sainz, who was only a second behind me when I pitted. We might even beat Fernando Alonso out of the pit lane. There he is on the left side, and here we come through looking for a back-to-back podium finish in the Haas. Who could have seen this coming fresh off of a career day in Mexico? We're in position to get a podium again. 2 laps to go in the Grand Prix. Leclerc continues to lead the way as we head down towards turn 1, and Fernando Alonso putting some pressure immediately on me. I was expecting him to have a bit more pace than myself in these wet conditions, and I'm slipping and sliding around. Here comes Fernando. You see on the proximity radar getting closer and closer as we head down this straightaway towards turn 4. Does he make a move? I think he will. Yes, he does. Up the inside goes the Spaniard of Alonso, the 2-time world champion that we're dueling it out with for a final spot on the podium. Who comes out on top? Well, there's your answer right there. We go crashing into the barrier and tear the front end of the car completely off, and our day comes to an end a lap and a half early. Talk about a choke. I mean, I just simply lost it and wrecked it, and, well, we don't use flashbacks here, and that was it. My day was over. Let's head to the podium.
Not just victory today then, but the championship as well. What a spectacular season they've had. Congratulations to the whole team. Tell me, Ant, how do they manage to achieve this win?
It's a heroic effort for any driver to race in conditions like these, and seeing them fight their way to the front was very special indeed. They were able to find all the grip, all the good lines, and had the confidence to get on the power to top it all off. That's what pushed them into first place here today.
You heard, I should say, Croft, you mentioned a championship decided. That is the Constructors' Championship that has been decided. Ferrari is your Constructors' Champions for this season. Who could have seen Ferrari finally making something happen here? And Leclerc, well, wins the Grand Prix. Unfortunately, we're not on the podium. It is Alonso on the podium there alongside George Russell. But we played our cards to perfection here today, and we were going to finish, I should say, way better than what we actually had here in this Grand Prix. Just unfortunately, it didn't work out. So it is what it is. But let's take a look at the championship standings. Max Verstappen managed to finish in P7, only 2/10 behind Sebastian Vettel. Those 2/10 could be very, very important going into Abu Dhabi. Our teammate Mick Schumacher there finished in 13th place. Both of the Aston Martins actually in the points. Really happy that Vettel got P6 there. Could be his best finish to round off his final season here in Formula 1. But let's take a look, like I said, at the standings. Wow, Leclerc with a 20-point gap over Verstappen. Verstappen is simply going to have to win, no matter what. Going into the Grand Prix, and Leclerc is going to need to struggle and finish in like the bottom few spots inside the points if Verstappen wants to win the championship. It's going to be interesting. We're going to take off and head towards Abu Dhabi. I'll see you guys for the championship round. Have a great day, everybody.